buddy. Appreciate it.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interest, and we never will be. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today to our digital edition at theepochtimes.com and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. Read the difference on all your devices. We'd love to have you on board.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another live edition of Veteran Nation. Do not adjust your screens. I actually do look like this, so there's nothing funny at play. I wish I could tell you that I am joined by my esteemed colleague T.C. Pearson, but he is on assignment. Apparently, he found out that the border has people coming across, and he told Juan, hey, I'm going to go get to the bottom of this. I live right near the border, but he didn't realize it's Canada that he lives near, not Mexico. So he's off somewhere getting us, hopefully, some really great footage that we can use. But we did have a really great discussion last week with Terry and Patrick Caserta of the Brandon Caserta Foundation, and they are back this week. And we're going to get into a couple things. Now, last week we focused a lot about Brandon's story, some of the things that led up to his tragic death. And this week, I really want to get into the Brandon Act. And that was an act that they worked very hard and got passed. And it is now a part of U.S. law. And we want to get into a little bit how it can help all the veterans out there who are watching. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring Terry and Patrick. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it.
Well, we enjoyed having you last week, and we really want to get all the information out. So thank you for giving us your time of coming back. I know last week, I'll just recap for our viewers. We talked a little bit about how Brandon had gone to BUDS training, and for those who don't know, that's Navy SEAL training. And he did not ring the bell. It was rung for him against his will. And it turned out that he actually had passed out because he had a leg that was broken in 3 places. So he did not quit the training, which is in general a requirement. He had a medical issue. And then he had other problems when he got assigned to his next unit, where they just thought they could treat him with inappropriately. I think that would bring everyone up to speed this far. I do want to talk a little bit, if you're willing to talk about it, what in the immediate days led up to his tragic death.
Absolutely.
Well, his command, they poured it on. I mean, he was the hardest, best worker in the command, literally. So the story is unique to itself. And they started doing things. They stole his wallet. A chief stole his wallet, used his credit card. They were harassing him. His LPO, Jared Bros, Doug D'Alessandro. they were making life rough for him because Brandon was leaving, going air crewman, and they didn't like that because they didn't want to lose him. But unfortunately, it was out of their hands. So their thought was, we'll just get him in trouble and he won't be able to leave. A Pete Lorette, it was an E9, called him in his office and was spitting in Brandon's face. He was yelling so loud at him and abusing him. His command master chief, Tarkowski, he did the same thing basically. It was just a mess, and it was 100 times worse, we found out afterwards, than it was what we actually knew. We knew some of it, and the solution was Brandon was leaving. He was getting out of the command because of this. That was the solution. We'd go after the people if he chose to after he left the command, so he was safeguarded. Unfortunately, we never got to that point, and that's the command did. I submit to you, I guess, in simplicity, is he jumped into the tail rotor of a helo after Tarkowski was screaming at him in front of everybody, and he missed. There's 13 people, nobody does anything. They just watch. And in these people, there's a danger line. The rotors are going. No one's allowed in there, period. That is their job, to keep people out, among other things. And he misses the first time, and they just watch again. And then the second time he was successful, and they all ran away. And they weren't properly trained by the commanding officer, obviously, because they didn't do their job in their various ranks, and they didn't care that he was dead, and yet alone try to stop him. But I guess my point is, if you really think about the simplicity, the story's complex, and the Navy has made out on this because it's so hard to explain the whole thing. It takes too long. But I give you some thoughts. What would make a 21-year-old who hasn't made it home, his own room? He actually had 2 rooms, a video game room. He was well off. When I say that, himself, he saved a lot of money. And what would make him jump into a tail rotor? And who has the guts to do it and actually leave a letter before they die to go through with something like that? If you really give it some thought, that tells you what that command did to him. There was no going back. There was no turning around. It was the only way out. And the second thing I submit to you is, we had told you this, but you got casualty assistant officers. So they're the ones that come to your door and tell you your son or daughter or loved one is dead. The commanding officer tells them to tell us he's alive and in the hospital, and he was not. And the casualty assistant officers had a message that stated he was alive in the hospital. So the command lied. So commanding officer ordered them to tell us that he was alive in the hospital. They wouldn't do it because they were E7s. They weren't part of the command. So they told the truth to us. However, if you think about that, why would a command lie? That's how corrupt the command is.
The only time I've ever seen a command lie is to cover up wrongdoing.
Thank you. And that's exactly what happened. And then this didn't come out last week, but to add injury to insult, they hold a memorial service. They do not have our permission. They do not invite us. The military is required to fly us out there and pay for everything. And the casualty assistance officers are the ones that set all that up. Well, they couldn't set it up because they didn't know about it, because the command didn't tell them. And then we did a FOIA, and in the FOIA, it says in there that they upped security for the memorial service in case we showed up, which we couldn't show up because we didn't know about it. Although several of Brandon's friends who were in Norfolk outside the command attempted to go, and the command wouldn't tell them where they were at, where it was at. They didn't want anybody around that command that somebody could ask a question to. Somebody normal, I'll word it that way. So that's what they did. And they justify it by not caring. I mean, we never got a sorry for your loss. We never got flowers, nothing. Not one person from his command, not one person showed up to his actual funeral. No flowers, no card, nothing.
Not even the person who escorted him home.
And but that's what they did, and they kept taunting us. I got the message. Go ahead, mess with us, see how far you get and everything. And I gotta tell you, I went after them. Unfortunately, I was delayed because of the press will not do a story without an NCIS investigation. Unfortunately, now we have changed that. When I say that is the playbook has changed because we came out in the public and everything. Nowadays, a
Hmm.
service member dies, the press is actually doing stories right away. I wish it would have been that way with us because we would have the 13 people with blood on their hands that killed our son or murdered our son would actually be in jail. Um, it's unfortunate, but these people carry on with life. Oh, the other thing is, I wanted to point out. Sorry. So imagine a commanding officer mustering the entire command, telling them word for word, kid you not, that if you talk to the Casertas or the press, we will consider this mutiny and we will throw you and you're going to Leavenworth. Now you tell me, who in their right mind would even say that, yet alone
And they
That
did it 3 times.
right 3 times? What happened is a year later, when we finally got our first story out, the reporter called and asked for their quotes. So they knew the story was coming. So they mustered the command again and put it out. And then we lucked out on this one. It's kind of funny. Only humor we get in all this is we had we actually had 2 stories coming out. One of them that came out that the command was expecting to come out came out on a Monday, and that's the one that they thought the reporter called them on. Turns out it wasn't. So on Wednesday, the second story came out, the one that the reporter called them. They were caught off guard, so they mustered the command again and put out a mutiny order. The same exact words, everything again. So they did it 3 times, almost a year apart, on from the first to the last one, and 2 in 1 week because of the articles. And then we had a large reward. I mean, a large reward for anybody to come forward. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they told them word for word, if any of you had any aspiration of collecting that reward, again, we'll consider a mutiny and you're going to Leavenworth. So you won't be able to spend the money if you were to get it. That's the type of command we're dealing with.
how,
In Whitmer, go
how is
ahead.
that even legal? That seems like, uh, I mean, I would say that would be, uh, I mean, a violation of those sailors' civil rights. First off, I would also say it's, of almost possible jury tampering. If anything was found in an NCIS investigation, was there ever an NCIS investigation conducted?
There was, and the command covered it up. When I say that is, if you haven't, you should read Brandon's letter. We have it posted on the
Okay.
brandonact.com
.org.
.org and brandoncasertafoundation.org. Anyway, if you study the letter for a little, as you read, pay close attention to it. It doesn't flow properly. The reason it doesn't is the evidence was in the middle. The command took it, obviously shredded it or burned it. And I submit to you this: if you think this conspiracy theory were crazy, then watch this. So Brandon's in the command for almost 2 years. He knew these 3 girls for about a year in the command. On and off, he spent time with them here and there. They did some stuff together. He leaves one of those girls a 9 page double sided letter. He leaves another one, I think it was 7 page double sided letter. He leaves a third one, 6 page double sided letter. He leaves us 4 pages. Now you tell me,
2 pages
we know him
double-sided.
21 years, and that's what we're going to get. And if you read the letter, you will see how positive it is towards us. You know they stole it.
Hmm.
And then they took his phone, his computer, they sent it to the FBI lab. Ironically, it was nothing on him, and it was erased.
And one thing that Patrick did forget to mention is when Brandon died, They used his fingerprint to get into his phone while he was laying on the flight line, deceased.
Now, that would be technically at that point your property, correct?
It
It is.
So,
ironically it was, but actually not in the way you're thinking. It was actually worse than that. It
okay.
What happened is we had paid for Brandon's phone. We never asked for reimbursement. He had come home the month before he died. It was his birthday. We all bought brand new smartphones, all three of us, brand new. I think they were Galaxy. And so it was a brand new phone. If you call that phone at any time, or excuse me, if that phone is calling you, it says it's coming from me, Patrick Caserta. It was my phone. They had no right to take it. I told them that. They laughed at me, of course.
Yeah, that's a
We were
violation
stupid.
of your rights. I would also say that's destruction of evidence as well.
And that's what they, yes, that's what they did. But the problem is that everyone needs to understand, and it's sad, is they have a playbook on literally, without exaggerating, how to get away with murder. When I say that is, you can't sue them. You can't
Hmm.
do anything. You cannot do anything. Now, if you look out, and it happens in town, if you want to call it lucky, um, you might have the police and everything, although the police tend to, because we've had a lot of people call us, they tend to turn it over to the military so they don't have to deal with it. So the military always gets their way.
I've dealt
But even if
plenty
it
of
is,
times. I've got on this YouTube channel. I have times where MPs have violated my rights. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
and so we couldn't sue them, we couldn't do anything to them, we couldn't hold them accountable to this day. Now the jury's still out. The reason being is we are determined, and we haven't pursued it because we were pursuing the Brandon Act with all our
Mhm.
energy and time. But we're going to get the FBI to reopen the investigation. If they do, everyone lied. They
Yeah,
falsified their statements. I mean, literally. So lying to an FBI agent is a felony. So there is still hope that they'll say,
good.
"Oh yeah, our statements are still good," and the FBI says, "Okay, here you go." That's great. So that's exactly what we wanted to hear because
Hands
we
behind your
we know,
back.
yeah.
As you go
So
forward with that, we want to help you here, and I know I can speak for TC because he was law enforcement and saw corruption on the inside, so we don't put up with any corruption at all. So we want to make sure that we're supporting you in anything that you need us to do. Uh, Obviously, reach out to us, and we'd love to help with any investigation.
that's
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you. We appreciate it
We
because
do.
need all the help we could get. And when I say that, I stand by this, what I'm about to tell everyone, and I mean it we mean it from our hearts, is Brandon's story saves lives. The true story. Knowing that story will save thousands upon thousands of lives. We had to start somewhere. And we started with the story that we knew. We know the story. We know it's true. There's no lying. There's no making up anything. It's all factual. So we had to start with something. I will tell you, we thought we had the saddest story, but there are thousands more stories just like this one that are just as
Absolutely,
sad, we found out.
yeah.
And but that's why we started with Brandon's story. And when we tell it, it's to save lives. I mean, a lot of people I have been very cooperative and help. You can't get where you're at without help. I won't deny that. The help didn't come as fast and quickly, and we probably had 1,000 no's for every yes. I'm not going to deny that. It was a tough uh, road to get to this point, and we had to give up basically the justice part. When I say that, unless something fell in our lap,
Hmm.
um, we had to put all our energy and focus on the other thing because the thought was if we start saving lives immediately, that's the way to go. That's our son's legacy. That's our legacy, is to save lives. We'll go back to the justice. I mean, there is no statute of limitations on murder. And
Hmm.
you chuckle about me using the term murder. I submit to you, this was a murder by suicide. And when I say that, you need to understand something, like it or not, these people will continue to kill and they just get better at it. And just like
And there
you
is,
see in the,
for folks watching, there is now judicial precedent that people who pressure people and push them to suicide can be tried for murder now.
Yep.
Exactly. And so, and then on top of that, these people, the reason they need to be held accountable is there's simplicity to it. If these people, how would you feel? Flash forward right now, you're saying, I'll never let my kids join the military. I don't have to worry about this. I'll never do it. Well, I'm here to tell you, you have a 10-year-old right now, 8 to 10 years from now, you have no idea what's going to happen. Whether you like it or not, I'm telling you a fact. They
I,
can join without even telling you.
I have a son who, we're a military family. He's got aunts, uncles, uh, myself, all who are in the military. That's what he says he wants to do, and it's hard because, uh, I'm gonna sit him down one day and show him because for all the stuff that happened to me, which it was not as bad as what happened to Brandon. I had suicidal thoughts while I was in, and I was a Marine Corps captain, and I same situation. I had a command around me that was doing things to me, and I was taking proof to my leadership and saying this right here requires an investigation. They wouldn't investigate anything, and their solution was to put me on deployments and various assignments of duty that were away from the command, all to try to intimidate me and keep me away from being able to get an investigation going. So I have a lot of understanding about the type of things that Brandon was probably going through. I've been in that place, and
Wow.
just by the grace of God, I did not take my own life. But that is what drove me to do this show. That's what's been driving me to turn this show into a nonprofit to help others. So with all this stuff, this is exactly the type of things that we want to bring to the forefront because, like you said, there's going to be other people. Your children are probably going to want to go into the military. And this is the reality of today's military.
It is, and I always say this when I can is, so 8 years from now, your son or daughter joins, and let's just say the doorbell rings, and the doorbell, two uniform uh, active duty people are at your door telling your son or daughter's dead. Okay, that's bad enough. How about if they tell you and you find out it's the same people that killed our son now has killed your son or daughter
Yep.
when you could have done something about it? And to take it a step further, because I've had people come back at me this. Okay, like it or not, a veteran is one tour of duty, basically. Okay. A retiree is 20 years at a minimum, typically. So these people do get jobs again in the regular world, okay, a lot of times. So let's just say your son or daughter, they get a hotshot engineering degree, they go to work for Google. And the same scenario I just gave you happens. And their supervisor happened to be one of the ones that killed our son. It's out there. Like it or not, they're all around you and they will be around you. And your families are spread out nowadays too. So it might not be your son or daughter. It could be a niece or nephew that you dearly loved. It could be a husband, a spouse. They have no preference. They'll kill anybody. There's no, they hate everybody equally, I guess. And if that's why something needs to be done about them, but that's why people need to be held accountable. Accountability will actually cure
Yeah.
suicide just by itself. Yes, the Brandon Act is a step in the right direction. The original Brandon Act we had we had accountability in there. It's just that Congress didn't like it. I'll word it that way. Boy, did they not like it, and we backed away from it. And the only reason we did is we were told that uh, Congressman Walton outright told us, he was honest with us. He is a veteran, and he told us, he goes, I will support you no matter what. I'll submit this bill the way it is. It's probably going to take 7 to 10 years to get approved with this accountability issue and everything in it. He said, if we tone it down, could probably get it passed right away or within 2 years. And he was right. And the thought was, I'd rather start saving lives in 2 years versus 10 years to have this
Mm.
harshness. I mean, the dream of these people going away in handcuffs and all this is just not practical at the time because we're dealing with the military and the military gets their way. And it's hard to get a bill passed, period, yet alone something to do with the military. So we toned it down. But the accountability factor, I honestly feel, and I'll stand behind this to no end, that any death in a command, the CO should be taken away in handcuffs, and we'll determine later if they were at fault, had a hand, or should have known. I'll word it that way. That's the way it should be. And the reason being is I was taught from day one when I joined the Navy, the ship sinks, it doesn't matter how it sank, the CO is at fault. So it's the same principle right there. So the point is, it's their command, they're responsible for their command, and they're liable for these deaths. And when they get caught, they'll go on record saying things like, "Oh, this is going to affect me for the rest of my life." Yeah, sure it is. You're only saying that because you got caught. You're not saying that because you mean it. Because if you truly cared about our son or daughter, they wouldn't be dead, number one.
Right.
And number two is all the shenanigans that took place before and after certainly wouldn't have happened. Um, but I do want to point out there are some honest commands out there, many
Hmm.
actually, and they run good and they help people and look out for their people and they're out there. And I'm not talking about all of them, but let's just put the number at 30%. That's a lot.
Yeah.
If 30% of the commands are
And I
bad
would say
and
that's
70 are
realistic
good.
too. In fact, you use the scenario of, they're going to go and work at Google. I actually can make this scenario for our audience seem a little bit more dangerous because I've dealt with this. Like I said, I was a captain. I was in. There were people specifically going out of their way trying to hurt me, trying to hurt my career, trying to hurt my family. Those individuals, because I had proof, the Marine Corps taught me CYA, and you can guess what that means. But it's, yeah, cover your six. And I saved everything, and I had proof of everything. And I didn't shut up about certain things, and I kept taking it to anyone who would listen. And what eventually happened is the individuals were allowed to retire. Here's the problem with not having faced real accountability. Those individuals now work right here at 29 Palms, work directly for the general. So they still have influence. They've never been held accountable. They're still doing, I guarantee you, wrong things in their position because, well, that guy's never had a problem. Yeah, because when you see no evil, speak no evil, and hear no evil, there's going to be no evil. So the, we are very much in line with what you guys are doing, and I hope you press forward for some accountability. And if you do, I definitely want to be a part of it, whether it's a Brandon Act, a second Brandon Act, or anything else. Because yeah, this is a much bigger problem. You don't get Fort Hood without the same people being involved over and over. I've said Fort Hood needs a someone to come in and just completely clean house, and then you'll see change. But what you're probably seeing is some of these people who are bad commanders and bad leaders took civilian positions and are still working their networks because, oh well, I know that guy over there, he's my buddy, and and they're still covering up for the same people. I've even seen I did an investigation on a Marine who was clearly doing sexually deviant things that were all against the UCMJ. I couldn't prove it, but there was enough proof for other crimes, and I finished my investigation and said, there's proof of this, this, and this, and this likely happened, but there's no proof that I can show the command. That individual was reprimanded, had some things, slap on the wrist type of stuff, but then was put into a position with a very vulnerable individual and sexually took advantage of that individual, is all I'll say. And again, it was the command. I was like, why would you put that guy there? What about that made sense. And these are the type of things that you see. I maybe one day will go into more detail on that, but it does involve some sensitive subjects, obviously. But I can tell you 100% if pulled in front of Congress or in front of a court of law, I would absolutely testify. This is how the military has these problems: is because of commanders who either don't care or who are actively nefarious. But
Agreed.
Yes.
I do want to talk a little bit about what you guys did get passed for the Brandon Act.
Sure. Well, what happened is Brandon's letter, he says, God, he says words in that letter. He says, make them pay for what they did to me. Busted in rank is not good enough. he actually says that in writing. But anyway,
And that he doesn't want a military funeral because he did absolutely nothing in the military to be proud of. But anyway, the Brandon Act.
so we when we got his phone, we found a lot of texts in his phone of other people who were wanting to take their lives, and he was actually talking them out of it. Unfortunately, I guess they weren't able to be there for him. He So we decided that he really took his life to expose the command, and he thought it was going to be a cakewalk. These people are going to be arrested and this is going to end. Unfortunately, when they cover things up and take the evidence, it's kind of hard to do that. So we decided, I was in the Navy for 22 years and I was in recruiting for 15, and no one ever died in any command I was in. Not because of me. I'm just telling you, it's supposed to be a rarity. Apparently in Norfolk it's not, but it is, or Fort Hood, but it's supposed to be a rarity.
Hmm.
And so when I found out about all the suicides and everything, we decided to write a bill and go to Congress and get it passed. So we did. We wrote the Brandon Act, and we literally made some appointments on Capitol Hill. We hopped in the car and we went to Capitol Hill, door to door, went to our appointments. The first place we went was Congressman Moulton. That was just a fluke. But he sat down with us and he talked to us and he understood and followed us and said he wants in, he wants to take the lead. And he said, but you don't have to say yes because you're going to be here all week long. You'll probably find others. And I'm like, no, go ahead, take the lead. And so he did. And we continued on that week and we had a lot of interest. I will point out to you that it wasn't as easy as everybody thinks. In other words, it was a no-brainer saving military lives
Hmm.
and to come up with a safe word and everything. But the staffs didn't see it that way. But you need to remember, we're dealing with 20, 21, 22-year-olds making decisions that hadn't been in. And then the ones that had been in, they were no better. I can't explain exactly why, but they weren't. And but we proceeded anyway. We wouldn't give up. We wouldn't take no for an answer. Failure was not an option to us. So we continued on. And the first year, it passed the House, and unfortunately, it did not pass the Senate, and that was during COVID. So we had a plan to go there and go door to door again and everything. We couldn't do that because of COVID.
Hmm.
And so we regrouped, and the next year
2021.
we did it again. And then this time we were able to go to DC for the introduction, and we went door to door. We pushed it and pushed hard to pass the Senate or the House again, and then it passed the Senate, and then President Biden signed it into law 21 December 2021. And so now you have the Brandon Act. So you're asking, what is the Brandon Act? The Brandon Act is a simplicity in form. Remember, go back to what Congressman Moulton said. We credit him on that part. Is the simplicity was to our advantage,
Good.
and getting a bill passed is tough. But once you get it passed, getting it amended is not tough. So keep that in the back of your mind. And you already alluded to that earlier. You'd help with Brandon Act 2, we'll call it, or adding. So how it works is, what would happen is, let's just say you were depressed and you were in your command and you wanted to go to mental health. And the typical answer, there's several. Brandon got to suck it up, get back to work. scenario. Another scenario is, could you wait till tomorrow? Tomorrow turns into next week turns into next month, and you know how that works. A lot of times it's no, and they tell you you're going to ruin your career, it's over, you're going to get a bad discharge, all this other stuff, and you're struggling. So with the Brandon Act, what you would do is you'd invoke the Brandon Act. And what happens is the command actually has to make an appointment for you for mental health. When I say that, a good command will want to do that for you. Okay. That's a fact. But if you haven't already, they have to ensure that you have an appointment, whether they have to make it themselves or you made it. Second is it protects you from retaliation when you invoke it. They can't mess with you. They cannot, period. You're no retaliation, nothing. You're safeguarded. And so you get the help you need. And the scenario I always give is, so you'll go to 4 or 5 sessions, and you know what? That might be enough to get you on your way to healing and understanding, because a psychologist is not neutral, or they are neutral, excuse me. They're not pro Navy, in this case we're talking, or pro you. They're in the middle. And all they're doing is teaching you how to get along in current society. Society dictates rules and how things go. So that's all they're doing. After 4, 5, 6 visits, you may be cured and you're going to be 100% again and go back, you know, and you're working all along here too. It's not you're going to be take off work. Now, if you're suicidal, that changes things. But again, the Brandon Act safeguards you. Now, the Brandon Act pertains to anything: alcohol, drugs, gambling, whatever is wrong, divorce, whatever you need help for, you invoke it. Sexual harassment, assault, you invoke it. It's a tool in your toolbox to invoke if you need to. That's how it works. It empowers a service member to be able to safeguard themselves and get help as they need it when they need it. Now,
And they don't have to go through their chain of command.
they do not. You
Okay.
could be in the middle of the night if you want to. If you live on base, you could go to your car or whatever, get on Zoom and talk to a psychologist that way if you choose to. No one needs to know about it. You could take a break at work during the day and go do it. You do whatever you want, and no, you don't have to tell anybody. It's not a crime not to tell them, and no, they don't need to know about it. If you want it that way, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, what's ironic about it, like I told Congress, is most chain of commands are going to mental health themselves. The difference is, like with me, I made rank quickly. If I never went to mental health, I can honestly tell you that my career would be over. But let's just use the scenario I needed to go. I didn't say I have a medical appointment. No one will question me, and nor do I have to tell them what kind of a medical appointment it is. But when you're in the junior ranks, they interrogate you to no end,
Oh yeah.
and you
Yeah.
don't have that luxury that you would as a senior rank. But
I'll,
senior ranks, they go to mental health all the time. I just want to point that out. They just don't need to tell anybody.
and I want to point something out to the audience, because as we're talking about these things, as we're talking about Fort Hood, Norfolk, 29 Palms, all these places that are having problems, I used to say, I did a lot of safety stuff while I was in the military. And I used to say that close calls are God's way of telling you there's a problem you need to fix. Because on the safety side, I can't tell you how many times we would have an incident and someone would be like, well, I knew it was going to happen because that almost happened last week. And it was like, well, you should have told me because we could have fixed it. And with all these things, what you see is at these places, there are, people coming forward about sexual harassment, sexual assault. Hey, there's been this problem, there's this problem. And I'll give you one example that I can talk to you about specifically, and that's at Camp Pendleton, Lieutenant Colonel Keith Bernays. I worked with this guy. He did not really care so much about the Marines. He only cared about the mission, but he didn't care about the readiness of the vehicles or anything else. It was about taking people who weren't towing the standards and beating them down type of thing. And he, in May of, I believe it was 2020, just as COVID was happening, all of a sudden the Marine Corps Times has this article, and people are sending it to me because I was in the unit before, and they were like, hey, you seeing this? And it's all this furniture sitting out on the grinder of the parade deck because Marines were going to mental health And Lieutenant Colonel Bernays and his sergeant major gave a order that said, no, you won't be going to mental health. And be, and the Marines still kept doing it. So then they said, okay, all furniture, all everything in your barracks room that is not issued has to be out by tomorrow, or you're going to be NJP'd. So these Marines had chairs, posters, stuff, just to make their living space a little bit more habitable, which is not against Marine Corps order. All of a sudden, they all had to put it out on the grinder, and it made some headlines. 2 months later, 2 months later, Lieutenant Colonel Bernays and several other Marines are now under investigation because one of the Amtraks and the Marines that they sent to the MEU sank off the coast of San Clemente, and 9 Marines and 1 corpsman died. So, close calls are a big flag, a big red flag saying that there's a problem here. And absolutely, these things need, it goes back to see no evil, hear no, speak no evil. If you don't have a commanding general or a commanding officer who's not going to investigate, you're gonna lose good people, one way or another. Sorry.
Yes.
And that's what happened to Brandon. No, that's okay. Aw.
That's
That's
conspiracy
what happened
kitty.
to Brandon because he wrote a letter to Commander Whitmer about what was going on in the command, and that 1 week before Brandon died. And that letter went absolutely nowhere. And in the investigations, Whitmer states he didn't know. The heck you didn't know. He gave you a letter.
And add further with Whitmer, it's what he knew and didn't know, he did know.
Mhm.
But let's just say the commanding officer didn't know, his chain of command did it. Number one, he's responsible for him. But number two, simplicity is, in Brandon's case, it's an outright lie. Not only did he get the letter, Brandon took a picture of the printer, he printed it out on at the command with the serial number on it. It was timestamped. He had a picture in his phone.
Yeah.
And of the letter too, and that got by them somehow. But Whitmer was the XO a couple of months before Brandon died. The CO liked Brandon a lot. He'd seek Brandon out because of his smile, and he'd
The old
ask
one.
Brandon when he is leaving. He'd walk around and talk to people. Obviously, this is a better CO, not perfect, but better. Whitmer was with him. He knew Brandon was leaving and everything. He should have been bucking at the bit to get him out of there. And a matter of fact, remember something. I won't deny that any special program you apply for, it may be a privilege to apply and be accepted. The command has to endorse it, yes. But if you're a good person, meaning you're a good soldier, you qualify, you get to go in for it. If you're accepted to it, the command is expected to support these special programs. Like it or not, it looks good on their evals, number one. Number two is, that's the needs of the Navy in this case. You got to let them go.
Mhm.
If you can't afford to let one person go, you got problems, especially in this case.
I have seen cases of commands who, no, we're going to cancel that guy's orders and keep him here. And my thing was always, you're telling me this guy is a dirtbag. Get him out of here. It's addition by subtraction if he's as bad as what you say. But yeah, you get these people, they get out to get individuals. So I totally believe it.
And the other thing I wanted to touch on, you brought up, I don't think I did before, is in Brandon's case, after he died, come to find out, a year and a half before he got there, a year, that command, HSC 28, was like the best command in Norfolk, Virginia, literally. And all the good people, ironically, just left. They transferred out, and the bad apples took over. Now, Brandon's death confirms what you said. Turns out that command had the most everything: sexual harassment, sexual assaults, hazing, bullying, all these charges, felonies committed, everything. They led the waterfront in these categories. A death is a red flag on, like you said, I knew something was going to happen. It was a matter of time. That's just a red flag telling you how bad the command is what it is. The death is just one of those red flags that come up. You'll find out anywhere there's a death, most of the time, this has been going on for a while, this kind of stuff. And it's been hidden, concealed, not taken care of properly, um, things of that nature. One example I want to give is there was a woman in the command. She'd been sexually harassed and assaulted literally 7 times, and there was DNA evidence against one of these cases, and the command did nothing.
Oh,
Well,
I've seen cases where
if there's a
there was literally the rapist admitted on camera or on audio tape, and yeah, still nothing done.
Of course.
well, well, what happened? So this woman's going through all this stuff, and nothing's happening, and she's afraid to walk to her car
Hmm.
alone. She has Brandon escorting her to her car. Now, I want you to think about something. There's a zero tolerance for sexual harassment, sexual assault in the military. The car is in a lit area in front of the command, and she's afraid to walk to the car at night. Now, you tell me, does that telling you how bad that command is?
Yeah.
I mean, who else is going to do it? People walking by? I mean, it was going to be in the command. There was something going on. She was scared to death of. And so Brandon would walk her to her car every night when they worked together. And but that's what would go on. But anyway, I just want to make sure. Is there any other questions about the Brand Act, or you wanted
Uh,
us to talk about?
no, I think you've hit on a lot of big things so people can know how important of an act it is. I do also want to talk about your foundation. What type of work are you guys doing currently with your foundation?
Well, right now, we are very new. We're just a little over a year old. We haven't really done much yet. Um, Donations are hard to come by, but what we want to do is our obviously our vision is to end the epidemic of suicide in the military. Um, we we are hoping to be able to fly families out to their service member when they need their support system, and their number one support system is the family. And we've noticed too that families, they don't have the money to spend traveling at the spur of the moment. And that's where we want to come in and say, hey, you know, we can help you with this. That's one thing that we want to do.
Hmm.
We also want to honor the ones who have died by suicide. Um, like here in Peoria, Arizona, they do memorial benches and shade trees. So we want to find, something that does that in every city, whether it's a bench or whether it's a tile or their name on a memorial wall. We want to be able to support that financially for the family, because it is very expensive to
Hmm.
have things like that done.
And remember something, these numbers you'll never get them, nor will they be talked about or released. Just think about how many attempts there are in the
Mhm.
military a day.
Oh
Those
yeah.
attempts they need their parents and loved ones by them to get through that. They got to be there. I'm sorry. And when she says don't have money, a lot of them, if you're on a budget of any sort, sport in a moment, if you live in San Diego, 3, 4 grand to go out to see your son or daughter, you might not be able to do that. That's why we want to be able to do that for them and have them spend quality time, because it's been proven that will prevent them from
Harming themselves.
harming themselves again in the future. And that's what we really want to do. But the other thing is, Terry's been doing this for years before the foundation. Is we get all kinds of calls. One could say we're a hotline, but it's not to report a command. It's my son or daughter has this problem. So it's for parents and it's for active duty. When I say that, is think about it. VSOs are for veterans. That's a good thing. I'm not criticizing. Active duty, though, is another story. There's not many out there. And all we are is a referral network. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not like we could do much of anything. I mean, we have some press contacts and stuff, but we tell them what to do. A lot of times, what we tell them are things that they didn't know. It's the parent calling them, or not the kid. It's the
Yeah.
parent. We have had the serviceman call, but it's usually the parents, especially moms. They relate to Terry, so they're very open, truthful with her, and We do that 24/7, or she does, excuse me, 24/7. That's our niche. And we've been funding this ourselves, since day one when we established the foundation. And we just want to get some capital and sustainability on this. But again, we're going to accomplish, we're doing all this stuff no matter what. We're going to start with a bench for Brandon, and then we're going to take pictures and post it, and everybody could see it. And when they could see it, then they'll probably want to be a part of it. And we're going to do 3 benches for Brandon, actually. And um, there was 3 favorite spots of his, is why. And we'll start there and go from there. And again, like I said, it's for Brandon, so we'll be paying for it, but because it is expensive. The way it works in our city is you pay for the bench, and it's like, I want to say $3,000. It sounds like a lot of money, but here's the caveat to it: they order it, build it, deliver it, hold a ceremony, and maintain it for the rest of its life. That's not a bad deal if you think
Mhm.
about it. They clean it. I mean, they do everything. Graffiti's on there. They got to come fix it. So it's a lot of money up front, but the longevity of it is awesome. And we're in Arizona here. We want 2 shade trees. You got to have shade trees, and you can buy them from them also. Those are cheaper, and that way somebody will sit on the bench because there's a shade tree. At least instead of 115, maybe it'll only be 100 underneath the trees. So, but the sun won't be beaming down on you, at least. So that's what we want to do. And
Well, I can tell you, I can't
we
speak for TC. Well, I can speak for him in the sense of I know he's going to want you to come on his show, Minnesota Black Road Regiment, that he does on his own. But I can tell you that if it, whatever you guys do, Arizona's not far from me. I would love to come out and cover it for our audience as well. Likewise, anything you guys have that you want us to push out, just send it to me. I'm happy to do that. Um, but sorry,
Yeah.
I had
yeah,
interrupted you.
No,
no, that's awesome, and we appreciate that.
very much.
And I will tell you what's unique is on the 5th of May is when DOD signed the Brandon Act into, well, let's, for simplicity, their law
Implementation.
implementation. They have 45 days, so they have till June 20th, all services, to implement the Brandon Act. We were there. It was a ceremony at the Pentagon, and we contacted all our press contacts that we had, and ironically, every one of them covered it and did a story. So we appreciate when people offer and do things like that, and it makes a difference because CNN, when we were on Capitol Hill finding out what's going on with the Brandon Act, why it's not implemented, because all these people are dying in Norfolk and Fort Hood and everywhere else, and CNN did a story on us and filmed us live. It aired, they filmed it on a Tuesday, it aired a Thursday. Monday morning, when we woke up, there was a message from the Pentagon on our phone stating, we're going to implement the Brandon Act within a month. Don't worry about it. Give us a call. Let's talk. So the press is huge, but my point is, that wouldn't have happened without them. In other words,
Mhm.
more people would have died. Remember, the sooner all this happens, the less people die. That's the theory. We're in the life-saving business here. That is what we do, and that we're committed to, and we will continue to do it for the rest of our lives. And obviously, we'll hopefully be able to pass the torch to someone to continue doing it. It's a never-ending thing, and our service members deserve it, and our country deserves that their son or daughter is taken care of properly, because they believe they are when they join. And unfortunately, it's not happening the way it should. Although, like I said, there's hundreds of thousands of success stories out there, but there's a lot of more deaths than you can imagine. Not just suicide. There's other types of death that happen, and they're all suspicious. And you have to believe what the military tells you, and that's another problem right there. That's why we want to get it where there's independent
Yeah.
outside investigations, such as the FBI, for everyone,
And I would
because
say anyone
your
that
son.
you have who is looking for media attention, feel free to send them to us as well, because even though we're small time over here, sometimes all it takes is that little push of a snowball to get a big avalanche going.
Right,
I
exactly.
wholeheartedly
And
agree.
and with the Brandon Act, just a real quick thing that Patrick normally usually says, if they can get help on active duty,
Hmm.
maybe the veterans won't have as many suicides because they have gotten help when they needed it the most. And the help that they get on active duty will show them that even as a veteran, getting help is what he calls not the dragon that people believe it is. So hopefully the you you fix or curb the veteran suicide by de facto.
Right. And it'll follow them the rest of their lives, whether it's private insurance, the VA, vet centers, wherever they need to go, it's there forever. And the sooner you get help, the better off you are. And the odds say you'll be fine if it's sooner. Later, it catches up to you. A lot of these veterans dying, we don't know all their stories, but a lot of them, they all start out from the family. They were told to do despicable things in Vietnam in particular, and they were told to suck it up and live with it. And it
Hmm.
catches up with you sooner or later, apparently. I couldn't have told you that when I was a kid, but I know that it is true. It is a true statement.
You would think, and one thing I've advocated for is within 6 months of hitting end of contract, I think that every service member who's planning on getting out should be made to mandatorily go and at least have a couple sessions where they get evaluated. I know why they don't want to do it because it's going to mean money out of the VA's pocket later on, but we're just 22 a day is just what the VA will acknowledge that we're losing. That's
Right.
it's higher than that.
Mhm. We agree.
Wholeheartedly. And we know this. And even the active duty is higher than what it looks like because they play around. They classify murders as suicide. They classify suicides as murders. It all depends on
Yep, they
what
will
the
play
public
with
finds
numbers.
out and what control.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh,
Whatever they can
I,
control, they got to twist it.
2006, Donald Rumsfeld said, "Hey, I want all mishaps reduced by at least 50%." And they said, "Okay, we'll take the lowest ones." And now those are non reportable. Hey, we hit our mark. They'll do that.
Yep.
I've been around the
I'm
block,
sure
I've
that was
seen it.
happening.
But
That's sad.
I do want you guys to plug your website and where people can get in touch with you, where they can specifically donate to you. Um,
They can you could go to www.brandoncasertafoundation.org. They can donate if they're willing to donate. They can donate there. They can also look at it's www the dot thebrandonact.org. That's just about the Brandon Act. There's no donate button on there because it's not an actual organization. Um, so those are both of our websites. Of course, we have Facebook. That's where most of the people that contact me are from either the websites or the Facebook page.
okay.
And then I wanted to point out to you the Brandon Act, in summary, it makes an impact that changes lives forever. This is a fact. You don't know how many parents have called, lost their son or daughter, no matter how they lost them. A lot of them are suicides. And they honestly believe their son or daughter would be alive today if the Brandon Act existed sooner. We believe Brandon would be alive.
Hmm.
So just everyone remember that the significant importance of the Brandon Act, as simple as it is, it's a huge step for everyone. It really is. It's important, very important.
Well, I really do appreciate you guys coming on here. I appreciate hearing Brandon's story. I want to thank you on behalf of all the military out there for all the hard work that you've done, all the hard work you're continuing to do, because it is very important to a lot of people out there. So thank you very much for coming on the show and talking about it. And as I said, we're in this fight together. Anything you need from us, let us know. And if people are reaching out to you and they need a bigger voice, send them to us. I'd love to have them on. Uh, even if they don't want to be, if they want to talk to us anonymously, I will absolutely respect that, because I've done shows where it's just myself talking about issues that I know are happening. As long as I can, you know, reasonably verify that, yeah, this is absolutely going on. So my degree's in journalism, and I'm a journalist at heart. So, but thank you again, and just let us know what we can do. For those watching on YouTube, the website is down at the scroll at the bottom of the page. If you're not watching on YouTube and you didn't write it all down real fast, just go onto our YouTube page, Veteran Nation, and you'll be able to see tonight's show and get it right off there. Also, you can follow our Facebook group, Veteran Nation. We are on Facebook. We are also on TruthSocial at Veteran Nation on TruthSocial. And thank you again to Terry and Patrick Caserta for joining us and telling Brandon's story. And to all of you out there watching, thank you for being worth serving.